that still may be in question, but particularly on the weekends, it's a concern for folks that I represent more than anything else, or people who play on the weekends, mostly home. So that being the case, there's just so many players who they cannot schedule a time like for a particular permit situation, things like that. Plus, some folks can just simply outright cannot afford it. There's other reasons. Maybe other people can bring some out, but I don't want to take up other people's time. But I just want to throw some of these things out.
I'm Tina Dudley. I work at Enterprise Community Partners. I'm a new player to the courts. I've been playing for 2 years, and I'm also a newish volleyball player. And I really appreciate how welcoming the community has been, even to lower level like B players. And although the leagues during the week are cool, the opportunity to actually practice on the weekend is like really important to me.
I'm Zach Welch, and I'm with DC Social, one of the organizations. I'm actually new to the area, but I'm here because I think there's a way that everybody can be out there together jointly and be happy playing. I think I don't think it has to be one way or the other. I think we can all work together to kind of make a compromise. I'm new to the situation, and when the permitting process first came out, I'll be the first one to admit I think that was one of the most hectic things that ever went on. I think it's crazy, and I don't think the organizations need every court during the week, but I think the organizations help people that need that set type schedule with everything that's going on. And I understand that the public needs their courts to go play pickup because they can't always schedule it one day. They just want to go out there. And I think that the organizations mostly are coming out during the week. I think the weekends, nobody really wants, as far as organizations, the people that we reach out to have things going on weekends, and that's more of the public's time. And I think that's when most of the players, from what I've heard, are playing. Yes. And I think there's some common ground that can be reached between the organizations and the general public, that we can kind of divvy up those courts, and then the organizations can work together on those court numbers if we were to be assigned a certain amount, so that everybody could be happy. I think the organizations could find a way to make that certain number of courts work as well.
I'm going to take some time, like after we're done with introductions, I'm going to take some time to like have everybody like paint a picture of like, what the time frames, given certain time frames of the week, what the demands of the courts are at those time frames, so we have an accurate picture of what they are, and then we can probably put some of your comments that you just had in context a little bit better.
Okay.
Okay. So, but I want to be able to paint that picture ahead of time so that we can all be on the same page about what happens at those courts when.
So in a matter of time, I think this is just a quick introduction of who we are, because all I'm going to tell you is my name is Sean Keneally, and I'm the Acting Deputy Superintendent of the National Mall Memorial Parks. Because a lot of these things we're going to get into in the 2 hours that we have together, so just keep that in mind as we go around the room, okay?
Quick question. You used the word organization. Is that correct, or are you a for-profit company?
With an organization.
Is that a non-profit company?
No.
Or what?
Not a non-profit company.
Okay.
Okay, I'm Marion Lapp. I've been playing volleyball down on the mall since the late 70s, when there were 4 courts. And I remember when Roger Morris said, "Guess what, Marion? We're going to have 11 courts." So I've been there for a long time. It's been a huge part of my life. I won't go on. I have to leave in half an hour for another obligation, but I just want to say, I think there is room, as Zach said, for structure for those who need it, but I would make a plea that for the weekends, let us have this organic, spontaneous, free, open community we have had for all these years. It's in the spirit of the mall, the Smithsonian. That people say, young people, old people, let's go down to the mall, let's feed the ducks, let's bike, let's play volleyball, let's fly kites. They don't necessarily want to join a league, they don't know where this league is to join, but on the weekends, the freedom of the public to come in and play volleyball residents, people from the suburbs, people from out of town is a very precious and integral thing. I'll stop talking now. Go ahead, Jim.
I'm Jim Joyner. I've been down on the mall for almost 40 years now. I remember when there was one court down there,
Yeah, down to you.
and the Ducks. I can't embellish on what Marion has just said, so I'll turn it over to.
I'm Gina Vallejo. I've been playing there for 4 summers, and I enjoy it very much. And I mostly play pickup twos, 2 women on 2 women, but I play other things and have lots of friends who play them. And I've met lots of people who play them.
I'm Kerry Lindahl. I've played down there 29 summers. This is my 30th season. I was really looking forward to it. I played there over 100 days last year. When I started, those 2 there beat me all the time. So it was way back to the 80s. Been there a long time. I also do a lot of maintenance. I'm the guy who bought and put up the 3 good nets down there and the 4 good sets of lines.
I'm Barry Pinellas. I've been down there almost as long as Kerry. In fact, I met Kerry and Marion and Jim and most of the people in this room down there. So I've been down there, I guess, 29 seasons. And I actually started on, like, not those doubles courts, but like all the sixes courts, learning how to play, and then kept moving up to where I could actually play doubles. Well, I can actually play, but that's neither here nor there.
My name is Hugo Samoa, and I've been in D.C. for the past 13 years, and out of those, I've played every single summer over there as well. And I'd like to, hear also what everyone has to say, and so we can keep doing what we've been doing, sort of maybe the same way, or try to come to an agreement that works for everyone, especially as D.C. taxpayers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, Leonard Lee, Division of Permits Management.
Robin Owen, Chief of Permits Management.
All right, I'm Sean Keneally again, the acting deputy superintendent. So I guess maybe it's a good time to maybe talk a little bit about some of the regulations associated with the permit process and give them a little bit of background of kind of how we got to this point. Robin, is that something that you can talk briefly about what some of the regulations that we're required to follow?
Certainly, we
when
can
it comes
first
to
talk
this?
about the agreement, because even though it was Park Service land, it was an agreement with DC Rec that they would take care of those courts and issue the permit for that for a number of years, which most of you are aware of, that you received the permit and you paid a very small fee. At one point, they wanted to increase the fee to about $50. And we kind of pushed back on it because it wasn't going to go for the upkeep of the courts. They had decided last year that they did not want to take control of those courts anymore. So they were giving the control back to the Park Service, which kicked in our regulation, which states that all sporting activities must be under a permit. So there was a big challenge for us. So a permit must be obtained. So we took a look at that, and we listened to you guys. We opened it up, and we got a lot of pushback, certainly. We listened, we looked at all of your comments, and hopefully we've come to a good compromise.
Can I just ask you a question? So in the regulations say playing baseball, football, croquet, tennis, and other organized games or sports require permits. And so I guess one of our big questions was, do you interpret the, like as you said, organic pickup volleyball, but is, the essence of being unorganized as an organized sport, as opposed to like a league play, which is quite obviously falls within that?
Well, certainly, and in the way the challenge games that was done, that's organized. A pickup game is just when someone goes out with their son or daughter and just pops it back and forth, just like on the mall. If someone goes out and just throws a frisbee, between their family, that's considered pickup. Yes, sir.
So then you decided to make a special exemption for the 4 challenge courts?
No, sir, we did not. We permitted it out to the Park Service.
So what we did is one of the concessions, I guess, if you will. What we consulted with our solicitor, and we were able to come up with a way to be able to reserve those 4 courts under the National Park Service, which then we decided to internally just to make them always open and available for first come, first serve. So that was our little way to get around the whole regulation that requires us to permit fields. And a field could be a ball field, a croquet field, a volleyball court. You know, there's a number of fields that we have. We have rugby fields in the park. We have a number of athletic fields in the park, and a volleyball court is considered an athletic field. So what we were able to do is, instead of having to permit or requiring permitting of all 11 courts, we've carved out 4 of them, where we have then, the Park Service has essentially reserved them for the entire year. But what we've done is we do not intend to use them, obviously, but we intend to let them be open.
They're held as open
and
court,
free
so anybody
to the public.
First come, first serve could come out.
Can I ask a question about I guess I think one big question that we have as players is how you see first come, first serve versus challenge, because so challenge is a way in which pickup volleyball is played to allow a constant inflow of new players to play, which is what I guess from our perspective we would consider to be unorganized. But first come, first serve allows, for example, a league like what happened. I'm not pointing to you.
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
fine.
But a league
I
to have like on, was it Sunday?
Yes.
Or yesterday, leagues took over some of the unpermitted open first come, first serve doubles courts and would not accept challenges or get off of them. So the first come, first serve rule actually allows leagues who have people who are within their paid remit to go sit on courts and hold them.
No, we've addressed that.
Okay.
We have monitors that will be out there that will check and see if they go out and they see someone sitting on that court at 6 o'clock in the morning to hold it, they can't do that. You've got to have your players out there at least 30 minutes before.
Actually playing.
But
that still doesn't prevent a league though from reserving basically those courts, and that's what we've seen happen since these first come first serve rules have come into play.
But that, remember, you know, we have like our redo. So when we initially did the reservation system, as some of you may know, that someone locked down prime times for those courts. About $25,000. It went back to those people, and until we got a system in, we don't have monitors out there. So we're talking about not what's happening now, okay? It's what's going to be happening in July when we open things up for the reservation and the rules start kicking in. So at this point, yeah, it's kind of like, I guess you would say, the Wild West out there, because we don't have a monitor out there. So what we're going to be explaining today is what the change is and how. I mean, the goal here is to make things better court play, make it fair for those that are in leagues, those that are not in leagues that want to have challenge play. So we're trying to address all these different needs, requirements. I don't think everybody liked it one way before, but there's some people that were complaining about what was happening under the D.C. I guess regulations. So we are trying to make adjustments. We're trying to listen to you and trying to make some changes that some people, not everybody's gonna be happy. We know that, but what we're trying to do is make better play, and we're trying to make sure that we have open play, because we were listening. Like some people say, look, can we have some courts that are not under reservation? And so we are addressing that.
So Karen, the question is, it's a very creative solution to the regulation, but we don't have to stop at 4. We can make the same solution apply to 8 courts, or we can do it for 11 courts, practically speaking. So once the regulation is interpreted, with this open mind, which is fine, the question is why stop at the 4 and not give it, a kick towards the larger court?
I think our answer to that is that, the National Park Service, we are trying to, having these courts, it is our responsibility to take care of them. Have we done a very good job in the past? Not really, but we want to do better, and we need money to do that. And so those people that are going to have a reservation system, with this new reservation system, that money will start being pumped in, and it will be a benefit for everybody. Otherwise, we're going to talk a little further, and Michael's going to be talking a little bit of what we would like to do starting this fall. So if we can, kind of give you the overall map, and then if you have questions, maybe that's a better time.
So the National Mall Memorial Parks, we manage and maintain over 1,000 acres of property in Washington, D.C. So the mall, the monuments, the memorials, we have 138 reservations or parcels of land north of Constitution Avenue. So out of all those areas that we're responsible for, we have about $850 million of deferred maintenance. So a lot of issues in this park that need attention. Roof systems, seawall systems, and a number of things. Unfortunately, our volleyball courts have suffered because they are lower in priority than some of our memorial sites and some of our higher visited areas. So one of the reasons why we're doing this, not through just regulation, but for taking that money to do improvements, is to do just that. We'll actually now have a revenue stream to be able to do maintenance and other operations and other requirements that we've never been able to do before, because we just quite frankly can't afford it. With all the other demands in the park, these things kind of go by the wayside. But now that we have a dedicated revenue stream through this permit process, and we don't know what the dollar figures would be, and it's not going to be a lot of money, but it's going to be something more than we had before. And our intention is to take every dollar of those permit fees and dump it back into the maintenance of these courts. So, and Michael will go into it a little further, but we have a short-term maintenance plan that's occurring now, and then we have a long-term renovation plan that we plan to execute between November and March of this coming year. And then once we get into a condition, hopefully we can look at ways how we can partner together with you guys. We have a division of partnerships, and Robin Nixon, who is our chief, is on vacation this week, but she would be more than interested in talking to you guys about establishing a formal friends group. We have friends groups throughout the park. We have business improvement districts, we have partners, we have all kinds of folks that help us get money and maintain these sites that we just quite frankly can't afford. So maybe that's an avenue we can go down, and a road we can go down in the future, where if you guys want to solidify and formalize a friends group, we'll be more than happy to talk to you about that. He had his hand up first.
Sorry. Beat you to it. Two things related to that. Coming down in the metro, I worked through the numbers. You'll gain a maximum of $65,000 a year. Maximum. So that gives you a rough figure. And that is really good number. I have a handle on what the hours are and everything. Let's see, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, okay. Once the courts are redone, there's almost no maintenance. Right. You don't have to tell them, you don't have to do anything. About every 5 to 6 years, you'll have to buy a whole new set of nets and lines. That's it. Once they're redone. There's almost no maintenance.
But just please keep in mind that we have the ongoing maintenance of the turf, the trees, the shrubbery, the trash collection.
All the usual stuff.
There's a continuous facility operations maintenance requirement in that area that we would need to hopefully ramp up. And by having this extra revenue stream, it might be able to allow us to hire one extra seasonal that can do basic services such as sanitation and trash removal and other things like that. So there's always ongoing maintenance.
Yeah, that used to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
the drinking fountain.
Yes.
So the drinking fountain. Right now, the water supply for that drinking fountain has been compromised in a couple different areas. As part of the rehabilitation of Parkway Drive, which is that road that you see to the left of the courts, we're working with the Federal Highway Administration. We have a multi-million-dollar project that we're going to begin right after 4th of July to rehabilitate that road. Part of that project, we were able to put in that they reestablish that water service to the drinking fountain.
Well, how is the maintenance funded at this point, before any money, new money's coming?
For
that
the
funded?
park?
Yeah, for that.
So the park, we operate off of a budget.
Okay.
We have a budget that Congress gives us,
Right.
and based on that budget, we prioritize what the operations and maintenance requirements are for the park for all of our sites. We look at interpretive services. We provide the education and interpretation services that you see the rangers with the flat hats on. We have preservation crews that deal with the statues. We have administrative staff we have to, hire, and HR and contracting, and we're basically the way we operate here is kind of like our own little city, if you will. We own all the infrastructure. We have 47 lane miles of roads that we manage and maintain. All those roads that you see around the volleyball courts are ours.
Right.
All the infrastructure such as water lines and sewer lines and storm lines, that's all National Park Service. So we operate kind of like our own Department of Public Works, if you will. So we have a huge responsibility in not only the maintenance of these 1,000 acres, but also the interpretation, education. We have a robust volunteer program. We have volunteers cleaning the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall every other day. We have other volunteer groups in the uptown parks that help us with trash removal. We have business improvement districts that help us with, funding irrigation projects and painting benches and doing all kinds of stuff. So, we have major construction going on. You see all the road closures you see, Cuts Bridge, Parkway Drive, those are all of our projects that we manage and maintain. The Mall Turf and Soil Project, that's a $40 million investment that we're making to better the mall itself. So it's a combination of all these things is what our responsibility is.
So I just say,
Yes.
I'm impressed by the massiveness of your mandate and your operation. I, appreciate knowing all that. But in terms of these little courts we're talking about here, in a way, this new revenue stream is a solution in search of a problem, because there really, did you have complaints before about the maintenance of the courts?
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
they weren't from the organic community here. We took care of them. But the other thing I wanted to say was the point that Yasser brought up. It's great to have 4 courts. I appreciate your pointing out your position in that way. If we had 2 more of the large courts, because there, as you're probably aware, there's 2-size volleyball courts, and I'm a doubles player myself, but I appreciate the position of the sixes players, and those are the sort of pickup people. And if we could have 2 courts unreserved on the weekends for the sixes players, then there'd be a place for them. Otherwise, they're going to try to play on our small doubles courts. They're going to put pressure, and everything's going to be unfriendly down there. So I would say part of whatever compromise or solution we reach, if it could add 2 of the 4 courts, that I appreciate your position why you had to limit that to some degree. If there could be 2 more big sixes courts added to that.
So the 4 are doubles, correct?
So-
That's-
yeah.
that's what I understand. Okay.
Doubles.
And do you guys anticipate, sorry, actually, you've been waiting a long time to do a question.
Yeah, so you've been waiting.
So I guess for us, you had said that you don't have a dollar amount, but it would be really helpful for us to be able to understand what your anticipated budget is for maintenance, because I feel like that should play a role in deciding how much revenue you need to maintain. And maybe like the revenue that you get from the permits is like a drop in the ocean compared to what your maintenance costs are.
Yeah,
And
but
that's
remember,
totally
it's not all
possible.
maintenance, it's gonna be monitoring, so we are gonna be
Sure.
paying someone's salary, 1 or 2 people out there to be going and saying, okay, we'll get from rec.gov, we get a listing of those that have reserved those particular courts, and they will go in to make sure that, this person is supposed to be in there and to get,
Sorry.
and to get feedback. So that's part of your fee is to if you go in and say, I want this court, I want a court, it's going to be a double court or whatever the system is, and someone else is in there, you're going to say, hey, I have the permit here, and they go away, lady. We're here first. Our monitors will be enforcing your ability to use the courts when you you know, for the time period that you asked for.
So the reason why I bring that up is because, I mean, if you hire people, you have to pay their salary, you have to pay their benefits, I mean, everything else. The beauty of the challenge system is that you don't need a monitor for that. You don't need to hire people to monitor the courts because the challenge system works and on its own. It doesn't require any oversight. So I mean, if that's a huge portion of the maintenance cost of these courts, I mean, purely a challenge system.
No, I just said it's
rids us of that, right?
It's part of it.
It's a minor cost. I mean, there won't be someone out there 8 hours a day.
No.
I mean, they're going to just periodically go through there. Robin will assign the staff to go out there. That's just a very small cost compared to the other.
And let me just say that we don't get 100% back of that fee money. We get 80% that will come directly back to the park.
And then also, as you recognize, the challenge system does not always work. Yeah, case in point was this past weekend.
But that's not a challenge system. That's why I was asking about the difference between what your interpretation is between the first come, first serve and the challenge system. So first come, first serve means that if you're on the court, you can stay on the court. And that's why leagues currently are able to sit on a court and keep a court.
Use the term
challenge
hold.
system,
Let's go one at a time. Okay, we're going to go one at a time.
So a challenge system enables a constant inflow of new players, and that's why it doesn't require this oversight because people have to accept a challenge depending on
Right now, there's actually no rules. There are no rules posted out there, so it's the Wild West.
But online, though, for the press release, it said first come, first serve.
So can we use first come, first serve and challenge courts interchangeably?
No, not at all.
No, I know. I'm talking about us. I'm not talking about you guys. I know the volleyball. I know it's a totally different thing when it comes to volleyball. I was just asking about us as far as our permit goes with those courts.
Okay, we have a question over here in the teal.
I actually just have a comment that I think we should put aside like some of the things that happen when people are hotheads and they don't want to get off the court or they think something wasn't fair. I mean, we have like adult things sometimes, and some of us have more issues than others that are just going to happen that the National Park Service should not have to get into. So the whole monitoring to make sure like challenge courts work and things like that, I just do not think that's something we even need to worry about. Like, as long as, and okay, I also wanted to say that part of the reason that we're having more skirmishes now is because it's different than what people were used to last for the culture. It's our culture down there is to not have certain things permitted and to have certain things permitted. So as much as possible, insofar as you guys can have the culture be maintained from what DC used to do, it will just cause less of these silly skirmishes that honestly are just like adult problems that adults need to work through. So that's my viewpoint on it, just me. But I just think people are more hot-headed right now because they care about this stuff and they want to play. And I don't think you guys even really have to worry about monitoring it. But we do need to keep in mind that people are going to be coming down there with that perception of what it has been in the past. And a radical change isn't great right now. Like having permits on the weekends for those other courts is going to be really different for people, and that will cause skirmishes.
Yes.
Yeah, Gina's making some excellent points, and they're kind of overlapping with what Marion was saying, and I'd like to add some between those two. And I was really hoping, I discussed with a couple friends of mine as we tend to meet and talk about this, that I personally was really hoping there would be an opportunity, and it may not happen, for some of you folks, staff people, to actually show up at the courts and just hang around for maybe an hour or two. I know your time is your person, but that's truly the best way you could really get a feel for the environment that's going on down there. And you see, like we're talking about challenge and so forth, you can actually see this unfold. And sometimes, it's happened to me. I've been down there as long as anybody over all these years. And I'm not as psyched with volleyball now as I used to be. It just, you just kind of mature in a different place, but I still love the game. I say that to draw this distinction, which is that in the past, maybe 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I go down there still usually on the weekends, so that's mainly where I'm coming from. and I want others to speak who were there during the week, so, is that I would be so psyched to, okay, and back then the courts were more crowded than they are now, generally speaking. And so I get down there, I get on a pickup team, and that's the beauty of it. You know, from one game to the next, one weekend to the next, you could be playing against someone you were just on the same team with just minutes ago. And people get along with this. I mean, it's a stunning thing if you think about it. But anyway, so then I would get on a team. You know, I see everybody's playing, and well, how many teams are? Well, I might be 3 teams down. Oh, I got to wait. That's an hour's play easily. So I got to wait an hour to get on the court. So then we get up, we're warming up, and we're about ready to go on. What's the score? So now we're ready to step on, and then someone turns to us and says, "Oh, we were next." So that bumps us down again, and we thought we were to go on next. But there's no big deal. I mean, there might be some disappointment. Like I would be disappointed. I'm psyched. I'm ready to go on this next game. But somebody says, "Oh, they didn't hear us call. We were actually on that." So you discuss it to make sure that person says, "Yeah, they were on next," and that's fine. You know, yes, you can be disappointed, but that's just part of the environment that we're talking about that's down there. Things like that would just be kind of eradicated with a paid permit paid system. And to get back, take us some other time here, but to get back to Marion's point, and again, I'm speaking mainly for weekend, is that I know Mayor was talking about having at least 2 courts, and that's good, that are free and open play. But even though I'm just a weekend player, typically if I'm down there, and I'm only down there like in the later afternoon, there are people come down there from like maybe 10 in the morning. They're there all day, 9 in the morning.
Or much earlier.
So there's folks down there from one time zone frame to another all day. So that means one shift might come in early, another shift. I come in later in the day. Typically, Saturdays and Sunday afternoon that I'm there, it's almost always every court has play on. I mean, I'm not even talking about the doubles courts. I'm just talking about the 1 through 7 or whatever they say. So I'm not even addressing the doubles courts. Always somebody playing. So what I'm getting to is that what we, meaning the weekend, more the weekend players, are striving for, and I think it's a fair, like was mentioned earlier, trying to be fair to folks, regardless of what their stance is, that if we are hoping, we are sincerely hoping that all these folks can maintain this expectation of play on the weekends for these courts. Because if it's only narrowed to 2, I know Miriam is offering that as a solution, then consider the amount of people that are playing on 6 courts are now jammed up to 2 courts. Yeah. It's just, that would be a nightmare.
Go gentleman in the back.
Sure. Almost the same color as the shirt Larry has on. So whatever solution that you come up with, however, whatever that solution is, I think, unlike Gina, I actually think you actually need to be fairly explicit. You have the little board there to actually put up what the rules are. So, for example, if you decide that, you know, you're going to have 4 doubles courts and they're going to be challenge courts in the sense that it's not a first come, first serve, I think you have to explicitly state that on the little rules that you have to say that that's the way those courts are going to be, and what the concept of a challenge is. And then you also have to deal with what happens if you have 6 people come on to challenge on a court that's actually sized for 2-on-2 play. I mean, yes, Gina's right that normally we should be able to deal with that ourselves, but the reference back to some type of explicit rules actually comes in useful, because everybody else can say, go look at, you know, the little board that you have there, and this is how this operates.
I think Michael might be able to talk about this, because I understood that you were developing rules.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, no, I'm just saying whatever the rules are.
In the write-up that I did and I sent out, but I don't know if you've seen them.
So why
based on this
don't we
conversation,
have
but-
Michael go over that? Because I think we're missing that. I mean, I'm like going, yeah, we're doing that, we're doing that, we're doing that. So not everybody knows what we're doing. So maybe Michael can go over some of the things that we have developed.
Well, so, I mean, so we identified, I became aware of the fact that people were using doubles courts as more than doubles, the sixes. And so the draft set of rules that I put together and circulated internally actually identifies them as doubles play only. So it should stop the overflow of 6 people over. I also put them in the draft rules as challenge courts with challenge rules based on a bunch of other courts and how they're run, whatever I can find on the internet as far as how that goes. So those are in place, and I think we're going to try to find a way internally to maybe see those rules work. So hopefully that takes care of that a little bit. So and then I guess so that's all the time, and then on the weeknights we have permitting for the sixes. Is there
On how many courts?
we're gonna redo court 11. So these 6 courts,
The large ones.
these courts. Wow,
Don't touch the screen.
No, you
I have now mastered
Just wave
how
it.
that works. And then we're redoing that court right
Okay,
there.
okay.
So those courts are all going to be under permit. Is there a culture of? I guess my question, listen to everybody. Is there a culture of pick up 6 games on the weeknights?
Yes.
Yeah.
That actually, can I say
Faces
something
and
really quickly? I mean, for one of the things that I know I have emailed and talked to each of you about already, but just in front of everyone, because not everyone knows what our exchanges have been, is that I think that the one big weak spot of the new system that you're proposing is that it excludes players who are less experienced, families, tourists, people who can't walk onto a doubles court and play. Well, I mean, but if you're permitting the sixes courts only and you're not permitting any of the doubles courts, you exclude a huge segment of our volleyball population. So basically, people like Barry was saying that he started playing 4s and 6s and then worked his way up to doubles as he became a better player over time. And if you permit those courts all the time, league play is not conducive to learning the game.
But in the past, those have been basically league play, right?
No. There have been some.
How many courses do the leagues take up in the evening?
Well,
Last year was different, I think.
Yeah, I mean, let me start from from my own historical basis, and there are other people that go back that far. Roger goes back that far. Larry goes back. I actually started playing volleyball by taking a learning annex class down on those sixes courts 30 years ago from Roger. And
I'm not holding any responsibility about your ability.
And I'm not suggesting, Roger, that whatever. The point is that, and I would go after work and play sixes there. The only leagues that I knew of at the time, and this goes back literally 30 years ago, I can't speak for what's going on today, but 30 years ago, probably through the early 2000s, I knew of 2 leagues that played down there, and they didn't play down there every night. So people would play down there all the time on sort of either pick up sixes, or when the courts were all the same dimension, they would be pick up doubles or pick up sixes. It would vary,
Fours or threes.
or whatever, right?
Mike, and
And
never took more than 2 or 3 courts. You know, that's a very important point. So there were a couple of leagues, they would start.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember 10 years ago, there would be 3 courts that are used by leagues.
Is anybody from the league? Your league?
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear from him since he's the only,
Dan just also showed up.
Okay, good.
We're league too.
So I think there's a couple points to make. One, the leagues don't exist because they just decided to show up. The leagues exist because people want to play and they've organized and there's a demand for them. So in recent history, last few years, DC, and further back than that, DC has made available those 6 courts for permits. Now, have they always been permitted? No. But in the last 30 years, it's progressively gotten more and more that people are seeking organized play. And to the point that social or lower level volleyball players aren't able to play in leagues, I'd have to disagree with that. I think actually many of our players are probably the most low level players you have.
No, I didn't say
and
that.
they
I'm
feel,
saying you're forcing them to pay to play, and you're not forcing more.
No one's forcing anybody to pay to play. They're choosing to pay to play because.
Okay, let's go one at a time.
But in terms of introducing volleyball to people, leagues actually are a very good way of doing that. And I think the takeaway for me with all of this is, however it shakes out, of these are permanent, these aren't, these are challenge play, these are pickup play. The biggest thing I think is to make sure that how that's divided up works for that group. And so there was a lot of talk prior to the comment period ending with some of the stakeholders between leagues and pickup, and we tried to hammer out a lot of what would pickup players want to see, what would a league player want to see. And I think we saw the pendulum go too far to the permanent side with the transition, and now in some ways the pendulum's moved back towards the center, but in some ways it's also moved the other way with single week long permitting. That really is probably the worst possible setup for organized league play you can have, because there's no consistency from week to week. And so it's important to keep in mind that league play is part of a vibrant community of volleyball down there. It's important to know that we are extremely efficient in the people that we touch. A lot of people are able to play because leagues exist. And ultimately, if we can find a system that gives the pickup players what they want, and also can, whether it's maybe the number of courts aren't going to happen that everybody wants. The league may want more, pickup may want more. But the courts that are set aside for permits, having them set up in a way that actually helps leagues play, as opposed to what we have right now, which is, I mean, really, I can't imagine a more difficult, kind of unorganized, people rushing to try to get permits at 12:01 online, this like ticket type thing, like did you get tickets to the concert or not? No, they were sold out. Like it's pretty much as bad as it could be for league play right now. So that's kind of where I'm at, and lots of other things have come up, and I'm sure I'll have other contributions, but that's my general thoughts.
Okay, gentleman in the back blue.
So, my name's Javier, I'm a pickup player, and I've been playing with these courts for 10 years, and I think the 7-day thing is a great thing. Sorry, I definitely think that was a great thing y'all did, and I appreciate what you've done so far with the 4 courts. I think we have to separate the weeknights from the weekends, and I want to talk about the weekends first. Like what Larry was saying, we're all like, if there is any way you guys could ever go there on a Saturday or Sunday around 11 in the morning, it's amazing. I mean, you'll see just hundreds of us. We're just regular pickup players. We take it a lot more serious. We enjoy the game more. The leagues, I hate to say this, but when I've seen them, it's a lot of they're just fooling around. They're drinking, and they just don't take it as serious. And so on the weekends, it's really important, I think, to keep all the courts without permits. And I really wish you guys would come there to visit on the weekends to see how it works and how we all work together. Like Barry was saying, when it does get really crowded, we get a list actually on the doubles courts, and we keep a list of who's next, so it's organized and there's no fighting, and that works out really well. So anyway, that's all.
Gentleman in blue with the beard.
Hi, my name is Josh Sachs. I started out playing 6s and 4s on the big courts, and then Roger also taught me how to play doubles, which is why no one wants to be my partner.
Wait a second.
What my concern is severalfold. One, if it were up to me, there would be no permitting whatsoever on the courts. They are taxpayer-supported property. I don't fundamentally believe that there should be allowed to have a profit on it, but I understand that that is probably the direction it's going. So what I would only say is that, like Javier said, on Saturdays, it is immensely crowded, and that there are, all of those courts are filled up, and if there is to be permitting on Saturdays, then the pickup players will start migrating over to, I think, the double courts, where you will have conflicts between people who want to play doubles and 6s as well as ability level. I would also say that you have the issue, Javier is right, there is a lot of drinking from the leagues down there, and occasionally park police comes down and tickets people, but there is that is a problem, and there is a lot of litter that comes from that. I know Roger, Carrie, and I sometimes walk around cleaning that stuff up because we just don't like looking at litter.
We all do.
And then I would say the other issue that I think is pressing is that in the event that there are courts that are permitted, and there seems to be leagues playing now during the week, that if one of the courts is flooded, that doesn't give them permission to then come onto the doubles courts and say, well, we have a permit and this is flooded, so we're going to take this. Well, if you don't have a permit, then you shouldn't be on the court. And there should be a way to enforce that, or we should have some type of rule structure where you have to say, present a paper permit. Those are my comments, and I appreciate your consideration.
Okay, one mic, Michael.
I just wanted to clarify my mind. The guys who are here from leagues, how much of a demand is there for league play on weekends?
There is light demand on Sunday. There might be more because it hasn't previously existed. If there was the ability to do it, there might be some to develop over Sundays. There's been some interest lists from some of the groups. I don't think there's really any at all on Saturday. And when we sat down prior to this meeting to kind of figure out what might be, because that's what one of the ideas that was floated out, was that league play tends to be earlier in the day, and having a smaller window for Sunday league play might be a compromise where there's 4 hours of league play because of the efficiency that it brings in. And then if by 12 o'clock, they're out, there's time. That was one possible solution.
And
that was
also
run.
not during peak season.
And not during peak season, not during summer season. It was more spring and fall season that was.
So what days of the week and what times of the day
It's in the
are the
public
leagues looking at as prime
Peak time is Tuesday through Thursday, but really Monday through Thursday, and then maybe Sunday morning is really the peak time.
And what's
for
the time Monday through Thursday?
5:30 to 8:30, really, if you're pushing your limits. 6 to 8 is the core. And then on Sunday it would be
time for pickup players. Sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
I know, what,
Sure. You know, I will say though that the kind of the volleys that are being thrown out about drinking, I've seen drinking happen from everybody. Pickup players drink too. There's coolers that.
No. It's not like we're going to table the drinking as much as we probably need to have a beer now. But that's probably really not what we want to focus on this afternoon. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to make one more point though on that.
Okay.
The idea of leagues moving from one court to another because they got flooded out. I think we need to differentiate what responsible players do, whether they be pickup or not pickup players, and leagues and not league, or responsible pickup players and responsible leagues. Just because a league may have done something doesn't mean all leagues do that. And just because a pickup player has done something doesn't mean all pickup players do that. And I point out that very often, at least our group, we pump our own courts with our water pump when they flood. So we're not moving to anyone else's courts. And if that's happened in the past, that doesn't, that's a totally separate issue on whether or not courts should be permanent or not.
and I don't think we want to point fingers. I mean, we're not in high school anymore. So
but it's definitely happening.
Okay.
Right? Fingers were pointed.
Going forward.
It happened yesterday.
Okay, well, so let
Michael's got the floor.
Let Michael speak, because we need to talk about some other issues, that you brought up as far as the condition of the courts, so.
So going forward, first of all, part of the monitoring and getting people up there is the idea that every day there will be a sheet posted of who's got what permit on what court. So that would alleviate any of that moving from court to court. And hopefully that this ends up being a temporary problem because we are in the design phases right now of designing full-scale drainage and of course you perform very well whether it's raining or not once we're done with the drainage. So so that's.
Can I just say something?
And we'll reestablish court number 11. So the idea of the problems in the past as far as yes, we had a hiccup on the sand, and I think we got that straightened out. Sorry about that. We're learning. Because we do it, our intentions were good. It was not, to make it uncomfortable.
I know the five people that have the hands up. Yeah, I
Right.
We're gonna go with when Karen's done, we're gonna go with the lady.
Just one thing, Barry, I didn't mean that we shouldn't have explicit rules with what kind of courts there are. I just mean I hope that we don't have to monitor this
and you guys have to be our parents. I think we can all work together, and we kind of do need some explicit guidelines in order to do that. The second thing, though, is just, I think that the idea of permitting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of anywhere else on National Park Service land where a pickup player would buy a permit. Usually the people buying permits are more organized league-type groups, whether or not they're making money off of it, whether or not they're a nonprofit or a for-profit organization. So I think the idea of permits to people who actually just play pickup, that don't say, I have a team, or I know there's going to be something organized, that's really foreign. Like, people, there are a bunch of people down there who have never bought permits, and then there are a bunch of people who bought permits, usually for their leagues or organized play. And I think usually it has generated money for them and for whoever they're buying the permits from. So I think if we could keep that in mind, like, to us, I think too, and I mean the pickup players, it's really hard to understand when we would ever buy a permit or if we would even ever do it, because that's just not how we play. But there's a bunch of other people that would buy permits. And just a quick second thing, I mean, this is like a supply versus demand problem. We've talked about it. There is not enough supply for the demand of the courts. And that's why we're gonna have to all come together and compromise. Like when you ask when the peak times are for the league play, it is the peak time for pickup. Nobody's going out, well, okay. Not very many people aren't there at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, so that's just the way it is.
Okay, you there.
So I just would like to say two things. One is more of a question, and I guess I'm not sure I see necessarily what makes it not feasible for league people to organize their play exactly as pickup people. So they could show up, regardless of the money that is raised, or maybe the coordination device via internet that may be better. They could themselves get organized exactly as the pickup players do, to show up there at a court and play. Yeah, sorry, I just want to say this, and then I would want to offer another view. Before finishing this point, the last thing I want to say, that's what we do when we play a tournament. We show up at 8:30, and man, I'm Italian. I don't show up at work at 8:30. They set meetings at 10 when they want me to attend. So we show up at that time because that's the time that we know we have to get organized and be in line to play. So I just don't see how leaving pickup for everyone would prevent league organizations to participate to that. I just don't see why those two are conflicting or not feasible to be together.
I mean, we run into this on the mall actually, where you get people staking out stuff, and you have to see it on the volleyball course where people start staking out whatever piece of land they can find early in the morning, and they're there, and we try to dissuade them, from doing that, but it turns out to be a real problem as far as it basically becomes a muscle thing. Who's been there the longest and who can stand their ground. So there really needs when it comes to leagues, in order for leagues to exist, they do need to be able to plan.
But we don't play 2.5-hour softball games. We play 15-minute volleyball games.
I'm just letting you know what the dynamic is for league play and why that pickup games would not work out. Leagues would not work in a league situation.
Sorry, I want to get to my second point, but also this organization is what we do during the tournaments all the time. And with the papers that circulate when we line up, who's next on this court? Oh, you're next. Okay, you're next. But then the second point I want to say is that pickup play there is one of the most beautiful things that this city has to offer, seriously. Because this is such an international city. People come from all over the places. And typically they come here for work. So who are they going to hang out? People from the office. And then finally, randomly, you run by there, you see people playing, and you're like, man, this is cool. And you see that there are people from all over the backgrounds. There are people that do a similar job, that do another job, and whatever. I'm an economist. There are people who are scientists, people who are nurses, people who work at Best Buy. man, that's awesome. I finally get to meet not only people that work in my office or at the IMF or at the World Bank or at another Federal Reserve. And I'm like, yeah, finally, some normal people, because economists are pretty weird. And one of the most beautiful aspects of that is that there is some sense of community, of working together, getting along, trying to smooth over the edges, and trying to literally maintaining the courts, be part of a community, which is beautiful because you don't have someone telling you have to do this because either I'm taxing you or there is a higher power, whatever rule has been said that we should do this. No, you decided, and you're part of the community that cares about these things. And that's why we're taking time off of work to be here. So this is one of the most beautiful things. Seriously, I consider in the past taking another job in Philadelphia, and I'm like, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to play like that. Because I've been at the Philly Fair, it's not the same. I mean, I'm Philly, and it's not the same.
Okay. Kevin in blue?
Yeah, let me go back historically to last summer to try to explain why the national park ended up getting the permits, getting back the courts from DC. So there was a threat of a suit to DC Recreation Department because according to DC law, they are not permitted to award commercial use on anything that they handle. And they were handling the courts, and they decided, in my opinion, I can't speak for DC, but I can speak for common sense, that they decided they don't want to handle, these permits or these courts because they cannot do it without violating their own law. So this is why the national park got the permits. The question I have, I'm not going to go back to DC, the question is what are the rules that bound the national park in terms of, commercial activity on a place like the courts? What are...
Define what you mean by commercial activity.
Commercial is if I go and get a picnic table for $10 and I turn around and sell it to Jim for $30, how does it sit with the laws that we have in terms of national park?
So the idea of you have for the permit system, let's say you rent the court for for the $30 for 2 hours. There's not supposed to be any money exchange on site. That's not allowed.
Sure.
We have all kinds of activities that we know that happen outside. I don't think this is for profit. I don't know if it's as far as. Are you saying this is for profit?
I'm saying it's
commercial for profit.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Can I say let them answer me and then you guys can speak. So I'm saying it's for profit. I'm saying I'm going to get this picnic table for $10. I'm going to turn around and give it to Jim for $30. And the supply and demand and everything is working. What rules and regulations are there?
Well, you can't have it. It can't be for profit.
It cannot be.
If money exchange is off park land, that's fine.
That's fine. So I can do it as long as the actual exchange is not done on the national park.
Correct.
And you're not for profit.
Wait, I heard two different things. I heard Karen say that it could not be for profit. Is that true or not?
And she said she doesn't care as long as it's done.
If it's not on park, if you're not you're not pulling out money and say, hey, you got the court for $30, here's $40, okay? You can't do
But you can do that as long as it's not on the park.
If you, Fort Robin?
Well, you can't transfer it. Say, for instance, you're mixing apples and oranges, really. You're talking about commercial profit. This is not a commercial profit. This is a fee. So it's not commercial.
Oh, the commercial profit is mine. It's not yours.
But if you go online and you get that permit,
right,
and you turn around and give it and sell it to somebody, you can't do that. You cannot transfer that permit to someone else.
Correct.
They don't understand the point.
Yeah, just right. They don't understand the point.
Kevin's
Wait, one person speaks, please. So who has the floor?
So you're done. You in the green had your hand up, then you in the blue, then you. So if you want to relinquish your right, you can let. Yes or no?
I'll ask it a different way. As you said, definitely, you cannot make a profit.
That's not true.
Cabins in Yosemite Park.
It's not true. There are commercial activities happening on national parks, service all across the country.
Yes, they're all obtained through the open bidding process.
Okay, let's.
Hold on.
there's a whole slew of activities that are happening on all types of different properties. The fundamental, most basic rule is that cash cannot change hands on government property. But this all comes back to this like making out one group to the other to be the enemy, and that's just not productive. Both groups serve a great purpose for a healthy, vibrant volleyball community. And I would never tell a pickup player how to run your guys' group and what works for yours. We, as a league, need some organization, and we're able to touch literally thousands of people who are introduced to the game. There's a way for us both to exist in a friendly, positive way. And if we can move beyond one group or the other being the enemy, I think this is a great room to come up with ideas and talk about what do pickup players need? What do league players need? What is the random family that wants to come down and have a picnic that doesn't want to be challenged on the court? Maybe they do want a 2-hour permit. And so some courts are permitted, some are challenged, some are permitted but only on a weekly basis. There's opportunities for everybody to win here, and we don't need to make anyone the enemy. And putting these guys on the spot to try to articulate some weird rule that might be or might not be there, this has been settled. This has been the way it's worked for literally decades. And so we need to move beyond this impasse that we're at right here and this mudslinging that's going on.
Okay, gentlemen, I had not relinquished my time to him at all.
Exactly.
I'm going now. We would like to get an answer on this, because no, it has not been settled. It is ambiguous. And it's a technical legal point. I think it's going under the radar for 10 years.
You're too deep, sir. So we'll get to you. Just don't. So you heard Robin say, and maybe Leonard can talk about the permit requirements when the permit is actually issued, right?
Yeah. Let me try to offer. Sir, I'm sorry. Let me try to offer some insight relative to the permitting process. We do realize that there are a number of varied types of activity, commercial activities that take place on our property. National Park Service has either commercial youth authorizations that we could use to try to monitor and facilitate that type of activity. We also have concession agreements that we enter, which are negotiated contracts. And we also have our permitting process. The permitting process, which we're limited to, we do not have as a means or one of the factors that we use to go through this process whether or not you're engaging in a commercial activity or not. That's not our consideration. Our only consideration is that whether or not the actual exchange of money as part of that commercial process is occurring on our property, which it cannot. We have very specific sales regulations that says that it cannot occur on our property. Now, if you as a profit, non-profit, any entity, if you decide to offer a service, the use of our property for a fee, people do that all the time. That fee is not exchanged on our property. We don't monitor what goes on outside of the National Park Service. We just try to ensure that as relates to the property, that it's available to anyone in as fair a process as possible, in as normal and regular and reoccurring a process as possible. That's why when we had to assume the responsibility of looking at the issuing permits for the volleyball courts, number one, we had to start with our basic regulation, which says that we have to issue permits. Well, how do we do that fairly? We had to try to come up with a system where it would be fair so that persons who are operating leagues, whether for-profit or not, would have an opportunity to use the property, as well as persons who are using it just on a challenge basis. But relative to trying to monitor and or prevent commercial activity on our property, that's something that it does not fall within our purview.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yes, sir.
So two situations. 2 months ago, I got married, and we took pictures on the Lincoln Memorial, and we had to spend $230 on a permit for that, on the steps of it. But we weren't allowed to kick anybody off or ask them to get out of the way. We were just allowed to do a commercial activity there. That is separate and distinct from a exclusive use. I think what the equivalent to that is if the leagues just wanted to operate and they wanted to go down there without having exclusive use, that would be the equivalent. But what they're trying to do is the equivalent of buying up every cabin in Yosemite on Memorial Day weekend and then charging 3 times what the going rate would be. That's exclusive use, and I think there's a difference, and I'm not sure how you guys distinguish that.
Well, one of the things we've not made, in terms of trying to make that distinction, what we're doing is looking at our commercial use authorizations. because we know that not only volleyball, but there are different other types of activities going on our property that is unpermitted and unregulated as it relates to it being a commercial activity. So in fact, as it relates to your commercial filming and photography permit, the area that you received the permit for that particular time period, you would have had an exclusive use for that particular area. And if you wanted to enforce that, either a monitor who would have been assigned to your activity or a United States Park Police person would have enforced the conditions that were specified in your permit. So for that particular small window of time, you would have been able to use that area.
Actually said couldn't do that. No, I got too deep and then I'll get to you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Okay, so, gentleman in blue.
Oh, I actually want to move to a somewhat different question.
Can I ask a related one then, Barry?
Sure, if I yield to Lauren, can I recall my time?
Because this falls on directly. It's just a general question. When you guys were deciding on the costs and the way that you were going to do the permits, did you consider that that there may be different levels of permitting for example, commercial use of something versus like a family buying a permit for 2 hours versus a league that's going to resell that time? Because I think that right now, that's also, I think, a big deal and about how the permits will work, because we're talking about using the same tool for two very different activities. So one, like Robert said, is they need to plan like quite far ahead in order to run a league efficiently or effectively, and then they will also be making profit on that, or not profit. I mean, I guess I don't know that it's relevant or not, but that's very different than what I think that your purported use of these permits are, which is that any individual can book these courts and use them. And it seems really odd to me to put on par a family or an individual buying a permit and a league. And so did you think about that when you were, or are you going to continue to think about that?
Well, Robin, you can speak to the Leonard about the analysis that was performed to get to the rate that was established.
Yeah, which unfortunately we didn't make those distinctions. The cost was associated with the going rate was throughout the Washington metropolitan area. We looked at what other jurisdictions were charging for the use of volleyball courts and other similar facilities, and went with that average cost. We didn't make a distinction between whether or not the permit would be issued to either an organized entity or just a family or just an individual. We didn't use that as a factor in coming up with the fee.
Okay, so we have the next gentleman here in the white,
and
then here in the blue.
I think I'd like to stand up for this one. Could we put that back on? Is that on, or is that just diving into the bathroom?
Somehow I lost my time, but whatever.
Go ahead, Barry. I'm in no rush.
No, I mean, so actually I wanted to talk about something completely different than what the discussion, going back to what Michael was talking about, maintenance. And one of my suggestions on maintenance is for the courts, if particularly for the courts that are set for doubles, if you could, when you're doing all the maintenance, putting in drainage, you could replace the poles with poles that allow you to move the net heights between women and men's net heights. Yep. It would make life somewhat easier.
Yep. No, that's absolutely.
Then I'll go back to.
They all rust in 2 years
anyway. Is that if all of the nets are adjustable, then all of the nets tend to be set to men's height. As a woman player down there with only one court in an area of 11 courts in a game that is traditionally a women's game in the U.S. I mean, I see this as like a huge gender disparity on these courts, and I think that it's an excellent idea to have adjustable courts, but I think that we need some courts, and I use that in a plural term, courts dedicated to women.
Well, maybe what we can do, this is what I'll offer. We have our landscape architect working on the plan along with Michael Sakowitz. What we can do is maybe we can have a little design charrette later this summer and get your input onto what really we need to do, so that when we finalize these drawings that we're producing.
Could they do the charrette down on the courts actually, or would that be too hard?
Sure, that's fine. Trust me, we're field people. We love
right. No, I mean, I'm just saying that in that sense, the charrette would actually make some sense to be done on the court.
We can do that. Okay, so we're gonna go to the gentleman in
All right,
white,
I'm
then
still
the
here.
dark blue, then the light blue.
But before I start, Jim, would you want to address some of the, because we discussed this with Leonard Lee when we started talking about bringing sand there.
Right.
Okay, and remember that, you and I did not agree on bringing sand there.
Right.
So, and I understand that that's probably the basis of this problem, because there wasn't this kind of demand for those 11 courts, before the sand was there.
Well, there's always been demand, Roger.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. All right, so I'm Roger Oliva. I run DC Doubles. I inherited this from Roger Morris. He worked closely with the Park Service, and initially, what Roger Morris did is he had one grass court. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, because you might even know something.
Yeah, there was one court,
right?
And there were 3 courts.
Right. So then, first it was this court right here.
Yeah.
And it was busy. Okay. Then it was these 3 courts, but the first DC Doubles was not even here.
No,
the first DC
it was on
Doubles
3rd
was on 3rd Street. So it's a popular sport. It's been a popular sport. I played at George Mason University, so it's not just girls that like it. We're professionals. But what has happened over the years is the amount of courts hasn't been able to meet the demand, and we understand that. And there's not to disagree with you, Leonard, openly, but the bottom line is there's really nothing else that compares to this anywhere in any. Well, maybe Chicago has a course like this, but in the Washington area there are pockets of sand courts, but there's nothing like this.
What are we disagreeing about?
Well, you said that you checked around, court costs, but those must have been indoor court costs, because none of the other comparable sand courts charge anything.
I'm from Chicago, and I can confirm that for a fact.
Well, that's not
They're
here.
outdoor sand
That's
courts.
not locally. I mean, that's
$34
okay, that's
per hour.
45 miles away. I'm talking about
$70
Arlington.
per hour.
Okay, that's 45
It's
miles
way
away.
out, yeah,
I'm
way
talking
out.
about Arlington has 3 or 4 courts.
You guys have a separate conversation outside the room, please? Thank you.
Okay, so, and first of all, I want to apologize. I don't know everybody here. I know the doubles players. I know some of the sixes players. I assume you're Sean. No, what's your name?
You just came late.
My name is Sean Keneally.
I thought you were Sean, and I assume you're Karen. You're Michael. You're the grounds guy. I met Leonard and I met Robin during the discussion about permits after the closing of the permit division. Okay, so what I've seen is that the DC government, it was just a chore for them. They didn't really care. They didn't try to raise money for courts, and they charged $7.
Actually, they were gonna raise the price, and we pushed back and said no.
Yeah, that's what Leonard and Robin told me when I met with them, which is fine, but they charged $7, and for $7 you got 4 nights. You got Tuesday nights for the month of July. Okay, so that's a great deal. Okay, but I think the idea for the permits back in the old days when there were only a couple courts, and then these 6 courts evolved. What the idea was that families could come and get those. Families aren't even in the game to get permits. Lincoln Quads, it's a league that I ran starting in 2001. I ran this league because the doubles players were Lincoln Quads is a league that has 3 levels, but they know how to play volleyball. Okay, they're actually volleyball players that want to play 4s. And so the doubles players, it was an overflow. I mean, there were so many doubles players on those 4 courts that they were waiting too long. And now, and who's the best player here? Josh. Now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the best players are not showing up there generally because it's too crowded for the doubles players. I mean, they'll go other places, but they won't even show up anymore. And it's kind of sad because a lot of guys want to test themselves out against the best players, but they can't because there's just no time in the weeknights. Okay, so personally, I would like to see permits go way altogether. I mean, I think that would solve it because if you do that, then you force everybody to play together. And if you don't want to play together, then go build your own facility somewhere. You have money, go build your own facility. I mean, that makes sense to me. Now,
I agree.
Yeah.
okay, so now I understand. So I understand there's a lot of people that want these permits, and I, as a league runner, understand that idea. And I run DC doubles, and I've been told for 35 years I can't have permits. Well, okay, well this year I had the permit for the first time, and so I did that, but it's not what I wanted to. And now I have to have a permit for the Jiffy John, which that kind of irritates me. That I have to pay $250 so that I can pay $90 a month for the Jiffy John. So that's kind of a bother. So the people here in the room are predominantly the people that are affected on the weekends. you can see by the reaction that that's who's here. Now, I met Robert. Robert actually emailed me 2 or 3 years ago, and he said, how do I get, a league started down there? And I said, well, there's already 4 leagues there, and they're fighting over the permits as it is. So, the only way you're going to do it is to show up at, 2 in the morning and get permits. So Lincoln Quads has been doing this for 10 years or 15 years, and we showed up at 8 p.m. the night before last June, May 31st.
Wow.
At 8 p.m. the night before, and only 2 out of our 4 people could get permits because the line was that long, and this was 8 p.m. So I don't know if you were involved last summer or not. I'm not really sure about that, but it's been a growing problem, and there's been 3 groups. Somebody mentioned 1 or 2 groups, but I think there's 3 groups. There's a ski club. There's
ECA.
There's what's that?
The architects
and engineers.
The architects and engineers, and then there are these random small groups, and they're not really leagues. But they've been doing this for years, and now they can't get permits at all. They've given up. So I kind of like to see. I don't think it's possible to satisfy everybody, and I'm actually the kind of person that believes that every reasonable person can be satisfied. So hopefully we can get to that point where every reasonable person is satisfied here. And I think that everybody in here needs to recognize that we would have nothing if it wasn't for the Park Service, because they've been very good to us. I mean, that land is worth millions, frankly. I mean, make no mistake about it. That land is probably worth $200 million, easy, just because of where it is. So I wouldn't I wouldn't say, oh well, I'm going to write my congressman. A lot of people have already done that, I think. So I think the bottom line here is that with some coordination we can get to a good solution. But I don't think any permits on the weekend. That's a terrible solution.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as permits during the week, I think if you limit it to 4, and you can charge $200 a night for those 4 permits, and you will get everybody that wants permits bad enough, they will pay that money for those 4 courts. And there's other 2 courts. I strongly believe that you should guard those 2 courts so that people can walk up and play 6s, and the other 4 courts or 5 courts should be just walk up doubles or whatever else. But see, the doubles players, I'm here to tell you that I had complaints of DC doubles 2 weeks ago, because there's an element of doubles players, they want big court doubles. I mean, so people say, oh, those are small courts, they are doubles courts. That's wrong. I mean, those courts should be big courts. I mean, I don't think they should be called doubles courts. They should all be 30 by 60. Because there are a lot of doubles players, I'm telling you, Josh, the open players, they like the big courts. So I think those 4 courts, when you're doing your redesign, I think those 4 courts should also be big courts.
Roger, can you just share how much time and money you've put in personally over the last 15 years to maintaining this?
Oh, it didn't cost me anything.
You collected from all of us.
Outside the park.
So in 2008, I sent you these numbers, but in 2008, we estimated it to be about $28,000 to get 500 tons, and we put 500 tons down there. And then in 2011, we brought in 2 different loads. We put 250 in April, and we put another 250 in August. So it was it was 300 and 300. So it was another 1,100. It was a total of 1,100 tons. So I don't know how much sand that they recently put down, but that 1,100 tons cost us about 50 grand probably total. And that's even if you count the volunteer hours. And the volunteers did the work, really. I mean, we had a lot of cooperation. The Park Service's maintenance folks, Martha Ellis, she coordinated. She was able to get a couple tractors down there, and in 2 days we were able to lay all the sand. We tried to lay drainage, and I feel kind of bad for the people that are suffering from flooding. The reason the drainage isn't working is because when we dug down, I kept on, we got to 12 inches, and I said, well, we need to get 18 inches down, and as soon as we got to the 12 or 14 inches, they hit this slate. It's this hard, it's just crap. I don't know what, that's like sharp slate. And so we wanted to get down into that so we could lay the pipe there, but we couldn't. So, I mean, they just said, well, so they gave me another 2 inches, and they said, well, as soon as you start bringing that stuff up, then you're going to have a lot of junk that you're going to have to haul away because you can't mix it with the rest. So anyway, so we only laid the pipes. We laid pipes on all the courts, and we only got down to like 12 or 14 inches. And those pipes, they're the aerated pipes with the sand sock open. And those work pretty well if you can keep them in the ground. But, as soon as the sand started to wear out or the wind blew the sand off, then they started to pop up, and eventually people just tore them out. So.
Okay, we have a gentleman here in dark blue, light blue, and then you over there.
couple things I was going to say in answer to some of the other questions before. There always used to be, Carrie, for you, there was other things away from the courts, but also volleyball that would do the for-profit and actually go and have a little station out on Constitution and everything to collect the money for the thing. But Columbia Doubles used to always run their tournaments down right by the reflecting pool and everything, and they'd have to go do that. Plus there was also a bunch of 60s tournaments that were down there, like cystic fibrosis and
Played a number of those actually, Michael.
Yes, I did.
And so did I.
So, but they were all there. So kind of the for-profit thing was actually a little bit there ahead of, before even the leagues and everything came down and all that. What Lauren said on the women's courts and everything was one of the things I tossed in about one net that it's actually the right height, for women's only, and then the other ones being adjustable so they could change around. Although I have to add in the one part is, I know myself on the weekends, I'll usually play Revco, which is on a women's height net. So I'll usually, if I'm down there, I'll try to play reverse co-ed a little bit, but I'll also do the thing about, if there's a line of 8 women teams, then I won't worry about it. I'll play something else. But also I'm hoping the women's courts aren't saying, it's just women only.
If there's only one.
I know. If there's only one, I know, I agree.
So the posts that we have that I found were just like a pin that could slide up and down for the different heights. So I think that type of, hopefully that's as easy as it sounds. We'll have to take a look at it and see if it is. And that would be part of the maintenance, to keep it as easy as that sounds, to be able to switch it back and forth.
And so it's not really I really don't want to say it's a woman's court. That's fine. You can call it whatever you want, but I think it's it's different heights that we want to achieve, so that even if you bring a group of kids, you can have kids down there playing, right? And it needs to be lowered. So so we're not identifying. So if we have all the courts so they're adjustable, then it gives more opportunities for those players to adjust according to the height, depending on how challenging they want it or not.
So I think to be honest, sorry, I'm interrupting because this is, to be honest, the reason why the women are worried is because there's 4 courts right now on the weekends. If they're all adjustable and guys are playing on all of them, right. 2 girls go up and challenge, there's no way you're going to beat the 2 guys.
Exactly.
You're never going to.
This is a problem. Under the challenge rules, it doesn't work.
So maybe we talk about, what the rules, I mean, that to me is a rule thing. If it's a woman, then you lower it. I don't know. I think we make.
But
there's
if it's 2 girls and 2 guys playing on a lowered net,
I think we talked enough about the net height, and I think we can come up with some design solutions for that. So I'd like to stop talking about the net height, because I think unless we have time at the end, we can sort of go back to it. But I do want to give this gentleman in the light blue shirt, and we do have a representative from Eleanor Holmes Norton.
And you also have.
And, right, so.
Oh, sorry.
So, my name's Sean Peabody. I'm new to DC. I've been here about a year. This is my favorite thing about DC are these courts. I play in the leagues and started in the leagues, and still do play leagues indoor now. And I'm there most weekends too. And I love DC doubles. Do that for the first time last month. So I think Roger is right that reasonable people can come up with a reasonable solution to all of this. And I also want to second the thanks for having this open house and having a comment period and taking a lot of what we said on board. And to see the new sand down there is really fantastic. So I'm happy to see this going forward. I would just like to talk about process a little bit, because it seems to me we've got a lot of different views, and we absolutely can come to a really good solution that's going to be 80% good for everybody. But we're not going to do it today. And I think that we just need more time together and with MPS to be able to hammer that out. So I just wanted to ask, how are we going to move forward so we can try and fix this? As I really don't think we can just sort of take notes. We just need more time to get to answers, clear up misunderstandings, and get to the right solution.
I guess my thought is that, thank you for all coming, because we hear your passion. You know, it's been, you know, some people have been here for decades. Some have just joined. And, you know, it's clear to me that you love the courts. And hopefully you love the National Park Service for having these courts available. We are, I guess my thinking is that, because we have, believe me, we have lots and lots of comments. You know, like I said, 500 comments from the public. I think what was helpful today is for us, we took notes on, you know, some of the nuances. We're going to, you know, reconvene. Park Service is going to reconvene. We're going to talk about it, and I think we're going to make a few adjustments. But we're hoping that, you know, based on your comments, we're hoping that, you know, let's get it started. Let's get the reservation system going, and then as things bubble up or things, you know, start to, you go, you know what, it's pretty good, but we need to tweak it here and tweak it there. That's what we like to do. We like to, you know, move a little, you know, let's get it going, make the improvements on the court. This is not our only conversation, of course. You know, we know that because of your passion, because of, you know, we may do things obvious like the sand. We thought we were doing a good thing. We had the wrong sand, you know. Sorry about that, you know. But we tried to rectify it, and we tried to, and so now we know the right sand to get. We hear that, you know, as far as adjustments of the courts, we know we want to, you know, make an improvement on court number 11. We hear that there's a different play on the weekend versus the week. The leagues like to be during the week and maybe Sunday morning. So those are the things that I think we can take into account in the permitting system. Are we going to permit? Yes. If you just know that if you are a player and you go, you know what, you know, usually I may like to be able to reserve a court and have it with my friends. We're going to have a party. We're going to be down there. And maybe this, you're giving me a look, but like, that's not how we do it. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the person that's in my head, you know. But you know, there may be that opportunity that somebody may say, you know what, I do want to reserve it, you know, because that's what I want to do. And like I said, we're gonna work with you. We're gonna tweak it. Yes, we're gonna have some of it's going to be under a permit system. How many courts? Maybe we can adjust it based on from your comments today. So hopefully you will, you know, give us a chance to get this going. Yes, it's going to be different, absolutely. But right now we have the Wild West out there. You don't like that either. Right? So, you know, as far as some issues that have been happening like this last weekend, which, you know.
Karen, can I make a suggestion to you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what I would highly recommend, and you've heard 5 or 10 people mention this already, and it's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. If you, or at least Sean, somebody from your organization can come down there randomly at 6:30 or 7 on a weeknight between now and July 6th, or whenever it's going to start. And on the weekends, even 9 o'clock, but after 11 is good too, just randomly, and not just, you know, for 10 minutes, but hang around and see how it works, because these are just good people having a good time. Yeah. And what's going to happen, and my prediction is, with a permit system, then eventually the good times are going to be gone, because the permits are it's a great place, so people are going to permit the heck out of it. You're going to make all the money you can stand, but that's not, I don't think, your goal. So
we totally get that. We definitely want, you know, all our visitors to have a fun, enjoyable learning experience here on the National Mall, and this is certainly an opportunity for them to have that. It's just some growing pains that we're going to have to go through, but we're willing to listen to you, talk to you. And when we invited you guys into our home tonight to talk about this, so we're not shying away from this. I mean, if we were, we wouldn't have had this open conversation. We would have just been bureaucrats and done our own thing and not engaged you. So we're going to continue to engage you as we, go through these growing pains. This is a relationship. We're not going to get divorced yet, but you know, we're going to keep growing together. So, but I do want to go around because you've been patiently waiting.
Yeah, I have a question. So, given there's only 7 courts, isn't that it's completely possible, and I think likely that only two people can reserve every single court each week and then deprive everybody else of playing, and then it becomes a monopoly. So now we're talking for-profit as opposed to public land, and it's becoming a monopoly, and it deprives everyone else of playing.
Well, there was limits on the number of courts
Right,
that a
there's
person
limits
could
on
do. I think it was 4.
Right. It was 4, excuse me.
4?
Well,
What was the
there's-
limit?
It was
Well, you can reserve
per
up
day.
to 4 courts a day.
A day.
Right, so you
So
have 2 people reserving all 4 of those courts, and that's going to be the leagues. Their whole job is to reserve these courts and make money off of it. So that's pretty.
But we
I
have
think that's the
courts that are
opposite
gonna
of
be
public
open.
use.
But there's 4 courts that are open for.
But they're not suitable for the 4s and 6s.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Right.
There's
So,
one
and we
thing-
hear you. We
yeah,
hear
there's one thing out
you.
of
So
this
maybe
meeting
there's some
that-
adjustment. We've heard that. I don't think.
We
Let's
heard
keep
it.
talking about new things.
Yeah,
We already got
I
the
have
rules
it.
today.
I
So
think-
no.
But you
think-
see where
Yeah.
there's if only 2% of the people who commented were for leagues. That's awfully. You're depriving 98% of what people want. It's pretty.
I think the issue
I would
becomes
never have
that-
stayed in D.C. I only stayed here. I moved here 15 years ago. I can tell you for a fact, and I'm sure half the people like Francesca, I would have left. Never would have stayed in the city if I didn't have volleyball on the weekend.
I think
come on,
the
what
issue
else do you
becomes
do?
defining what a person is for purposes of doing the reservation system. In essence, is the person the organization that's doing the reservation, or is it people within the organization doing? You see what I'm saying?
I mean, this is business versus the public. That's a fact. That's sort of a.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm
situation.
just suggesting that you may need to clarify the definition of what of person in doing the reservation system, because an organization is represented by people. So, in fact, one of the social leagues could actually call up, have 2 of their people call up, and literally reserve the courts, and all the other social leagues or organizations that want to play there can't get it because the 2 people have reserved all of those courts.
How about you have to be playing to hold the tournament? You have to actually be playing.
So those are some of the
Someone
ground
present.
rules that we need to establish.
Right, that's what I'm asking, right.
And post on the new
Right,
board
right.
that the Park Service constructed and installed
Right.
just recently. So yeah, absolutely. Those are the things that we need to continue to grow and develop over time. So
Megan, I'm first I just want to say I'm just here to listen. But I had just a quick question, and I'm sorry I was late, so if this was already asked, I beg all of your forgiveness. But I just have a question about enforcement. If there is a park ranger who's sort of dedicated to that area who could, did this get asked already? I'm sorry.
we talked about our monitors that will
Okay.
periodically monitor
Okay.
the play out there.
Then I'm good.
And then any type of law enforcement is conducted by the United States Park Police, which is our law enforcement arm of the National Park Service.
So I guess this is kind of an extension of Barry's question. So would there be a way to enforce if you establish a tiered permitting system, or if you limited organizations to a certain number, is there a way to prevent, and I'm not saying the leagues would do this or that they have done it, I'm just wondering to avoid an organization using just an individual sort of signing up as an individual, but really it's for the league. I mean, is there someone there? So would the monitor be able to enforce that if that issue came
Well,
up?
the monitor will be able to enforce whatever the final requirements are that we establish for the permitting process.
Okay.
One of those ways was, limiting it to 4 courts per.
You can go ahead and any one given day, you can go in and reserve 4 courts for no longer than a week at a time.
Okay.
And that is based upon other parks, specifically the tennis courts at Rock Creek Park for one.
Okay.
That's a system they use, and it worked extremely well with them because they had the same issues with people going in and playing the system and reserving all those courts for all year.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. You.
I have a question. Since clearly the demand, exceeds the supply, is there any plans in the works to build additional courts
Exactly what I was
in DC?
Currently, no. However, if we were to endeavor to do something like that, it would have to go through a compliance process The Commission of Fine Arts would be involved, the National Capital Planning Commission, and the State Historic Preservation Officer.
Would you have
Right
to-
now, I can tell you that, right now, we have too much to maintain as it is. I mean, we can't keep up with what we have. So, acquiring or constructing new assets is probably not something we're going to look into just yet.
Would that
Now,
require-
given the revenue stream that may potentially be there, maybe in the future, but I don't know. I mean, I can tell you in the near future, it is not our intent to construct any more courts.
Just a process question, would that require revisiting the National Mall Plan Environmental Impact Statement or Record of Decision? If you wanted to construct new courts, let's say somewhere else.
I don't know specifically, how we called out our recreation fields in the National Mall Plan, but, part of the plan is to offer that amenity to our visitor and everything like that. But I can tell you that in the near future, we're not going to have more courts. Yeah.
Is it on the same
I don't know who spoke more between the two of you, but you guys can arm wrestle and see who wants to.
No, is it on the same
Ladies
first?
first. Ladies first.
Why don't you challenge on the court?
It's a good question, actually, I think we developed it together. So, are there other options, I guess, for raising the revenue stream that you need besides permits? So, are there other examples around the National Mall? Of,
Sure, absolutely.
Like through a Friends of Group, or through like a corporate support or
Sure,
something
absolutely. A Friends
that we
Group.
could use instead of permitting, because I think for a lot of people the first best solution is not permitting, and for others I recognize that it is. And so if there is an issue of maintenance fees, is that a possibility? And
Sure,
how do we
absolutely.
discuss that?
So, if there is a Friends Group established and you get donors to contribute to that, certainly we can create an account, or it's a donation account that we would be able to use those funds strictly for that site. We've got a number of Friends Groups. We have the Trust for the National Mall, which is our largest nonprofit partner, who is currently raising over $100 million for the rehabilitation of the Constitution Gardens. We have the business improvement districts. We are actually, Karen and I are dedicating an art exhibit at Monroe and Monroe Parks that we jointly worked on with the Golden Triangle bid tomorrow. That was, I don't know, $100,000 worth of improvements in those parks. So yes, we have all kinds of Friends Groups that help raise money that we can then use to better improve and manage these sites.
So would it work like the more money a group can raise, the fewer permits you would have to issue?
No, I
That's
still
what
think you still have a regulation that is always in place.
What you guys need to remember is we have regulations to follow. Just like, we all had rules to follow when we were growing up by our parents. We've got rules that Congress gives us to follow. And we certainly don't want to put our superintendent in a situation where we're breaking these rules.
Right, yeah, but if it's in the CFR, it can be modified. Please, the introduction of the public gathering permit. No, this is something new that never applied to the courts. Okay? The question is, why did you guys extend the public gathering permit to the courts? And who do you have in mind who would apply for it? And what kind of... You want
to talk to that, Robin?
Well, there's different types of permits. Yes, there's the public gathering permits for special events and First Amendment demonstrations.
Sure.
And then there are special uses permits
Sure.
that you get for sporting activities, weddings, filming and photography.
I understand, but the question
But to answer your
according to the public, let me extend it. The public gathering permit allows you to apply for a permit up to a year in advance.
That's
which
correct.
means it overrides your permitting system, because the permitting system works only a week in advance, currently, as proposed. So if I apply for a permit for, let's say, next March or next April, nothing will stop me from asking the park to give me the 11 courts, for a public gathering permit. Maybe it's my birthday, and once I have that for a very inexpensive price, it's only $120. Practically speaking, I'm shutting out everybody from access to the courts if what my read is correct. Now, if you have a different reading.
Right, I do have a different reading because a public gathering, again, is for special events.
Right.
And for First Amendment demonstrations. Volleyball courts, the softball fields, the soccer fields under special use permits. So it does not have that criteria that you can submit an application a year in
So what's the
advance.
criteria then for the special use permit?
It's totally separate, sir.
So, but what is it?
Well, Leonard, can you address the different
Yes, sir.
rules and
You
regulations?
asked, if I'm understanding you correctly, why are we issuing permits, a public gathering permit for tournaments versus the regular league or regular play? The tournaments are a more enhanced use of the particular asset that we're talking about. We're talking about an activity that would not only be for the participants, but it would draw additional crowd spectators, which is going to have an increased impact to the resource. You would have to bring in portable restrooms with the increased numbers of participants to include the players and spectators. We're talking about public safety having to be an issue, crowd control having to be an issue. So in that particular case, to address those concerns or those predictions, we now have to bring in assets like law enforcement to monitor this activity to make sure that public safety and all the other issues are addressed. So, and it would only be for like a 2 or 3 day period. It would not be for an extended period of time, like a league play, if you will.
Right.
So it'll be for just that weekend. You're now having to bring in, you might want to have an award ceremony where you might be bringing in stages. Depending upon the number of people that you may have, you might be having medical assets to bring in.
Now, as far as I understand, it does not apply to, for example, the swimming pool or the tennis courts, which means I can't go out and get the tennis courts, all the tennis courts for my activity.
The tennis courts are run through our concessions operation. There's a contract governing their use, and the swimming pool doesn't belong to the National Park Service.
Sure.
So we're only talking about, in this particular case, the volleyball courts or baseball fields, well, softball fields for us, because we don't have baseball fields, or some of our multi-use fields, or the rugby field. So we do issue special use permits for regular league play, but then if that league wants to have a tournament, they have to apply for a public gathering permit, which would mean then that now they're bringing all these additional assets that is going to have a greater impact on the resource. And to be able to respond to that, we then ask that you, the permit holder, also bring in provide us with additional assets to cover the cost for monitoring that activity, as well as to provide U.S. Park Police to monitor and govern that activity as well. So that's why the public gathering has a different response from us, because the activity itself is different.
I think that the underlying concern is that it appears that there is potential for booking the courts over the weekends, which is, I think, almost unanimously when people don't want permits, booking the courts for entire weekends for tournaments, that almost anyone could do it and that it would become a widespread thing during the peak times that the courts are being used. I think that's the underlying concern with that question.
Yeah, and quite frankly, we appreciate that and understand that this is a new process for us, and we are trying to take in all of your recommendations and all of your input and all of your comments and try to come up with a system that's going to meet the needs of the majority of the folks who are our users and visitors. And we're trying the best we can to respond to all of these projections currently, but there will be some adjustments made, and we hope that through a process of continuing to be responsive and making the adjustments, we will come up with a process that will be workable.
Are those shall issue permits? Like,
I beg your pardon?
Do you have to grant those permits, or can you use your discretion whether you grant them or not?
Which type of permit?
The public gathering.
Well, we have to do everything on first come, first serve, and it all depends on whether or not there are conflicts with any requests that may have come in prior to yours. But no, we do not have to, depending upon the nature of the activity. We do have some latitude to deny a request.
So
yes.
Naked Sports couldn't apply for a permit every night of the week for a public gathering?
No.
No. And we may restrict how many times you can have that type of gathering.
Exactly.
Certain races that occur, they only occur, during, non-peak period, where the public is. So there's we, as we move along, we adjust. We move, we try to respond to what's happening out there.
Light blue and then dark blue. So I love how we're talking about an iterative process here. But what I heard from you, Karen, was that you're going to take our comments today into account and then modify the reserve system and post it. But I hope we can get out of this reactionary sort of system that we're in now, which was change, big reaction, and then hopefully we don't go change and then big reaction.
I hope so too.
So in order to get out of that, can I propose that the next thing that goes out is a draft?
and then we can have another meeting or two if we need it, and we can sort of talk. I know that doing the public comments is such a hassle for you guys. You have to go through every single one of them and code them. But if we could go to a draft and then put that out, and then we have a meeting and we can talk about it, I think we could get to that 80% agreement much, much faster. But if you guys just take a sort of a random stab at it, it's hard to tell if that's going to get us to a really good place or just marginally better. There's also lots of other people that may not be here today that might want to comment, but that's the problem. To get us out of that, I think it would be a lot more helpful if we could have a continuing conversation.
Well, hopefully, I mean, we've taken a lot of notes. The people that that I'm depending on to help craft, what is that balance, as far as the permit system, what is the balance for the public gathering, and like I said, as I said before, we're going to get things started. So don't think we're not listening to you. That's your fear. You're going, well, they didn't listen to us the first time, or they didn't give us the opportunity the first time, and we're not sure the Park Service is really listening to us.
No, I give you more credit. I give you a lot more credit than that. So I realize there's people that aren't here as well.
Absolutely.
And so that would
but that was their choice, yes. But I think we had okay. Okay, let me retract that. Is that we certainly gave everybody an opportunity again to comment. We had 500 people that heard it. We think that we have a good mix of people that have that are the leagues, the open play, the men, women, whatever, and that we're going to find, we're hoping that we are going to give a good start to this, and then we are going to adjust. Remember, if we have the 7-day reservation, that gives us lots of opportunity to make adjustments, right?
Okay, so we had a gentleman here.
A couple of small items, so just to rattle off. Another positive for adjustable nets is that as the sand levels change, it makes the ability to actually keep it the women's height if it's adjustable. The comment was made that only 2% of comments were from leagues. We purposefully did not email our league saying, please email these guys and send all these comments in support of league play, because we knew that you'd get 1,000 different little nuances. And so we spent a lot of time sitting down with other stakeholders and hammering out overall and working internally with all of the major leagues. And I sent another email recently as well with them all. So while only 2%, that doesn't mean that thousands of people aren't also being represented. Right. A specific question, and then one last comment after that. What happens right now? I voiced my opinion that the 7 days is about as bad as it gets for league play. It'd even be better to be first come, first serve, because that's at least more predictable. What happens if nobody permits one of the 6 courts? What are the rules for that evening? Is it first come, first serve? Is it challenge play? How does that work?
Right now in our draft, we are saying that it would be treated as a challenge course.
Okay. Second kind of, or last question type comment. There seems to be 2 big issues that I've seen bubble up today. For those people that really appreciate pickup play, the biggest issue is weekend permits and the fear that that's going to be a problem and that all of the weekend is permittable theoretically. On the league play, the big issue is the time frame, and they're totally separate, right? So they don't actually conflict, and I think there's an opportunity there to address the time frame and to address the weekend in a way that maybe isn't. I would like to see 10-week frame times, because that's actually a season, right? But maybe it's not 10. Maybe it goes back to the month like it used to be under DC. At least that was a movement in the right direction of some predictability. Maybe instead of the whole weekend, it's only a couple hours. Maybe it's nothing. I don't know. But I think those 2 seem to be the biggest issues on both sides. We're talking about what do pickup players want and what do league players want. So I just really want to hammer in that a 7-day time period literally is a race to the bottom every single week. And there are literally thousands of people who can only play if they know the game time that they're scheduled for. They don't have the luxury of coming out and waiting 2 or 3 hours. The whole hopefully get on the court, and they deserve to play as well.
Okay,
And so
great. Okay, we're going to try to wrap this up, relatively on time, but there's a couple people we haven't heard from, so I'm going to let them go first, and then we'll go back to Lauren. And
yes.
Great, thanks. Dan Boger from Naked Social Sports. I fully support all the things that Robert said from United Social Sports. I would say that I think my leagues and my players would be certainly willing to take weekends off the table for league play together. As a form of compromise to try to work with the on this.
That's cool.
I can't speak for other leagues, but I think we'd be fine with that. I think Robert indicated earlier that it's already a bit of a light thing for demand for us.
Right.
And so as a way to help move this process along, that's something I certainly be willing to get out there. Also, I run leagues in about 6 different cities. I don't know if it's at all helpful, but I can provide what the permitting process is in those other cities, if that helps you guys out at all.
Yeah, if you're willing to submit, please submit that to Rob and Owen. Before we go to people that have already spoken, is there anybody that hasn't spoken that would like to speak? Yes.
I just want to make, I'm probably one of the worst players that play out of there at the doubles courts, but one thing that frustrates me is if we have the challenge system, if you have like I don't know what the number is, if it's 4 games or if it's 2 games, and then you're off, because you can have people that just dominate the court all day, and then they'll be like, no, we're taking a break right now, we own the court, you can't play because we own the court. So
I'm actually curious from the room about that, because I ran into that while I was researching rules. There were some places that actually had rules that limited the amount of wins that you could have. Yeah. The rules here did not. I don't believe that they did not do that in the past. Is that something that is viewed as needed or favorable or not?
It's not favorable.
Not favorable.
No.
But I think that points to though. I think that points to the need though for A, more resources, which is something that we talk about, but B, the other thing besides the weekend play that is to build up what you were saying, Robert, is that I hope comes across in this meeting is that we are excluding with the current proposed system a huge portion of the volleyball community that will be pushed out and that won't come back. That's the problem. Like even these changes that have happened so far, we probably lost about 50% of the players from the courts. And if we isolate in a huge group of players who are less experienced players, and like I said, also families, etc., tourists, they won't come back because of the changes. It'll take years to rebuild that community. And I hope that as you're saying that you're listening and reiterating what you're doing, that you'll consider having some of those big courts be open to include players who are less experienced.
I just want to say quickly, to make sure you guys can understand or appreciate the pickup mentality. There's hundreds of us pickup players, and the way we all operate, most of us, I think I could speak. You get up Saturday, you're like, maybe I'll go at 10, maybe I'll go at 11. I'm gonna run some errands, I'll go at 3. It's so flexible that way, instead of the structure of, I'm going to try to organize with Steve and Kent and Carrie to pay $30 for 2 hours. That means I've got it, it's just too structured. And the way we all operate is to just show up there. And the beauty of just showing up, and then you're like, oh, Carrie's here. Hey, do you want to play? Me and you, let's call next. And you just pick up whoever's there and just jump on and play. And we just all really appreciate that system, and we really hope it stays that way.
My opinion from what I'm getting from this is, and like I said, I'm new to the leagues, but it swung one way when it switched hands. It swung one way in favor of the leagues, and it, excuse my French, it pissed everybody from the pickup off. And now all of a sudden, pickup wants to swing it all the way back to the other side. And at some point, as adults, we have to come to a compromise. Whether that be leagues say, okay, we want no part of the weekends, and it's all for pickup. You guys go do challenge courts, but at some point you have to compromise as pickup players and say, okay, we'll let leagues figure it out. They permit 6 courts, 5 courts, whatever we come to a number, we agree that, okay, those are for leagues. They can figure it out amongst themselves. They can argue, fight, do whatever. Right. That's completely out of MPS hands. It's out of pickup players' hands. It's all in the leagues. But at some point, as adults, we have to compromise. We can't just say, hey, we're going to swing the pendulum one way, and then all of a sudden, oh, we're going to swing it all the way back to the other. you have to give something up. You're not going to get it all one way or the other.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, you know, when you come to design your permit system, it's good to look at the customer on the other side, and there are two different ones. So we have the organized groups, maybe like Robert, who would like to have a permit for the whole season, and there's the individual that cannot possibly plan far in advance to play. I mean, this is not the national going to the Grand Canyon where you plan your trip 6 months in advance. That's one thing. This is just you know, an outing for 2 hours that most people can barely think even a day in advance, let alone a week in advance. So if and when you design the permit system, you want to take into account both the time, you know, that each group should be allowed, and also the fees that are involved, because they're really very different. You know, if you set it up the way you have it right now, it's a single system, does not discriminate, does not, you know, look at the other side of the story, and as a result, it's bound to be, you know, probably not suitable.
And figuring that out will maximize use. That's an important thing. If we figure that out, more people will be able to use it, so it's a win for everyone.
And as Karen said, I think, you know, we're gonna learn from this. We want to get this going. We know it's not going to be perfect, but we're willing and we're committed to make improvements down the road. But you know, you have to understand, we are under certain regulations and time constraints too to make things happen. So you know, we're going to continue our dialogue. I think it's been a great conversation. I mean, we could be like ducks tonight, just peck at this all night tonight, which we don't have time to do. But I think this was a good step in the right direction. I think there were some healthy conversations, and I think we want to wrap it up here in a few minutes. But I do want to take a shout out to Michael Stakowicz for helping to organize this and really getting involved and trying to figure out these volleyball courts. Michael was hired as our turf manager, so his responsibility is to manage the turf on the National Mall, not the volleyball courts. He's doing a great job. I mean, Michael has a master's degree in turf management and soil science. Wow. When he was assigned, okay, we got to figure out the sand. But yeah, there's sand in soil. So thank you, Michael, for learning everything you possibly can about volleyball courts. So, and you know, we're committed to continue to work with you guys. We've got some designs coming up that we're performing in-house. We do have a professional staff of architects and engineers where we do our own design, and we can get things contracted, and we self-perform a lot of the work too. So those things will be coming in the future.
And you also have our contact information.
And we did pass a sign-up sheet. If anyone wishes to be included,
and do you all have a card with your emails or something that we can contact you?
Lauren has all our emails, and she has our cell phone numbers and personal addresses.
I'm so sorry. Can I ask you a question that may make this all moot? Do you know what the deal is with that sign that says no parking on Ohio Drive from 7/6 to 12/1? They just put it up this week.
Where specifically?
It's at the top of the hill. I just saw it at the courts. It's at the courts, right at the Italian statues, right there at the Memorial Bridge. There's a big sign.
Big electronic sign.
Is that part of the
maybe.
Where exactly is it?
It's right at the access.
It's a big electronic sign.
Right on the access road to the volleyball courts.
Oh, is that something after the 4th of July? Or does it say a date on it?
Yeah, 7/6 to 12/1.
So what that is you saw there's a staging area. We call it a construction compound just north of the Lincoln Memorial. Parkway Drive, which is that road adjacent to the courts, that is going to be rehabilitated. So that's one of our federal highway projects that we're working on to do some road improvements. We're going to be rebuilding the bridge there. I mentioned earlier we're going to fix that water line that goes to the drinking fountain. So that project, there's going to be lane closures. So because we have to do asphalt work. There's electrical issues. There's bridge issues that we need to.
So that means there won't be any parking along that road?
Temporarily, while they're doing the work, of course.
It says for 5 months though.
Yeah. There's going to be changes in the shift, and I don't know all the construction details off the top of my head, but there's going to be single lane closures while we do that work. But there is right now there's timed parking, and I'll just give you a heads up. And I really didn't want to go with this tonight, but I'm going to let you know that.
Before you say it, is there a chance that we can reverse that? Because I know what you're going to say, and
the National Mall will be installing parking meters effective October 1st.
What is our
So all of our roads, we have, like I said, 47 lane miles of road. So our roads and parking lots will be metered parking until starting in October.
What day?
How much?
Pardon me?
Only a couple questions.
The whole week?
We've had public engagement, and I'm not going to get into a big discussion on this. This is something we've
No, we're
had
just
multiple
curious.
public
Yeah,
meetings
we're
on
not-
this. But we will be metering our parking just like the city does, just like Alexandria, Arlington, and all the other cities. It's $2 an hour.
Until when that night?
It'll go from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
How long can you stay?
3-hour parking, just like it is in the city.
Effective when?
October.
This weekend still.
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
365.
Will you take Park Mobile?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. We're on it. We use the best technology that's out there.
Can I just say from all of us, thank you for engaging us and thank you for taking the time to listen to us. And I know that it started out with like a media blitz, but we really appreciate you guys coming to the table and taking the time to explain things to us because we had lots of questions. We don't understand how the Park Service works. We wanted to wanted to share our passion for these courts. As you can see, I mean, people have been out here since Roger Morris founded the courts, and we're so excited about these courts. I think like open pickup players, leagues, everyone is excited about these courts. So we really appreciate you taking the time to engage us on this because they're very important to us.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.